All right. It's great to see everybody here today. I wonder if this monitor's working right here. Do we know? The front one right here? The front monitor? Okay. So it's great to see everybody here today for another class of the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program Teacher Certification course. See, most of you made it back. That's great. And I know it's hard to get out there and do that sometimes when you got a lot of things going on and it's hot and humid and so forth. So I want to thank you for being here. So tonight we're in the respect unit, which we have been for some time. You can go ahead and look at the overhead right there. We're in the respect unit of the Peaceful Solution. And so that gives you an idea right there what the book looks like. And you can go online and find this book on a drop-down menu if you're on Facebook. The official Peaceful Solution. So that'd be great. And you can follow along, download the book, whatever you want to do. Okay. So we will be starting out on Lesson Plan 7, page D. Lesson Plan 7, page D. And that will be procedure number 5. We'll just go over it real quick. Now, Catan left off on page 178 on the last class. And he got a little bit farther. He got started on it, so we're just going to start off up there at the top and continue on with it. And it was talking about the air quality. All right, so procedure number 5 in the respect unit on page Lesson Plan 7, page D. It says to explain to students they will now focus specifically on the resources of air, water, land, plants, and animals. And by learning all they can about these resources, they will have more appreciation for the environment. Tell students that failure to respect our environment has led to the pollution and contamination of our most vital resources. It says to have students read pages 177 through 179, which you've done most of that so far, in their handbooks. Let's take a closer look at our valuable resources, and then instruct students to complete the stop and think exercise concerning air found on page 179 and discuss their answers as a class. So we're going to go on over to page 179, but 178 we're going to cover a little bit first. So if you can turn on over to page 178. One of the things that Catan, I think it was Catan that mentioned it, but the resources, it's something, a resource is something that we can draw from, but it's also something that's very vital that we need. We need this for life, okay? And just looking back at 176 real quick, Earth's resources, you'll see a list there. Air, fresh water, land, animals and insects, oceans and seas, plants and trees, and sunlight. Without any of those things, it's not going to occur. Your resources are not going to, those resources are not going to work for you. You've got to have all of those things, okay? Back over to 178. By the way, I've got with me tonight some nice fresh mineral water straight from the resources right here at the Peaceful Solution headquarters. It's nice, cool, fresh mineral water. We're going to talk about why that's so very important here in just a few moments, okay? But it's great to have it available, and so when anyone comes here, I encourage you to go ahead and get you some and take back with you wherever you go. That's great to have. All right. So here are a few other facts about air. This is at the top of 178. I think, we take our air, a lot of us, we take our air, our water, and these precious resources, we take it for granted sometime. And, because it's there, we're not really, for the most part, having to pay for it. I mean, the air is all around us. It's not like somebody can come and just snatch it away from us. I mean, they might cover up our mouth and nose so we can't breathe, but they can't really take the air away. It's there, And so air surrounds the earth, and it extends as far as 1,000 miles above the surface. That's a long ways. Air shields us from the rays of the sun. Air helps to keep the earth warm enough to support life. And air protects us from objects headed to earth from space like meteors. What occurs when a meteor comes into our atmosphere? it melts down. It catches on fire. It burns. The heat, it just can't stand it, you know. Kind of like when it's 120 degrees here, it's hard to stand, you know. But although clean, unpolluted air is essential to life, get that? It's essential. It's necessary. You've got to have it. Many people fail to appreciate the value of this resource until breathing becomes hazardous to their health. Pollution is any addition of harmful substances to the air, land, or water that result in damage to the environment, human health, and the overall quality of life. Now, there seems to be a great divide on the belief of what really pollution consists of. Pollution in our air, for instance. You know, there's a large group of people that think that pollution is caused by burning wood, methane gas emitted from, like, you know, cows and other animals, burning charcoal, burning coals, you know, burning oil, and many things like that. They would say that our earth is contaminated by those things and it can't overcome it, while at the same time not understanding the more fundamental and the more basic things that they overlook that really have the true bearing upon our atmosphere. So this is why the peaceful solution is here, is to help bring the truth about these matters, to help people to look deeper, to go back to the basics first and look at how the earth survived for, you know, however many years, 6,000 years or so. Look at how it survived all this time without fancy machines to filter the air, to fancy terms like carbon credits and so forth like this, you know. How did it survive all this time without all these things, right? Well, that's what we need to do. Go back to the basics, take a look at how people lived and how they have been living all these years, and get back to the basics. All right, so air is a great carrier of pollution. If you've ever gone outside, if you ever lived in the city and walked outside on a particularly smoggy day, you'll know that there is a problem there when it comes to some of the things that is put out in the air, and we don't have enough trees and enough of the natural things that are there for us to filter out these things, the original filters. You know, I mean, it becomes hard to breathe, and then over a period of time you get different things going wrong with you because your body's broken down, your immune system's broken down, and so forth. From all these things. But with the right wind currents, pollution from one side of the world can eventually make its way to the opposite side of the world. And we've seen that before. Haven't we seen the fires, the smoke from the fires in California and Arizona coming all the way to us because of the wind currents? We've seen that before. In fact, I remember reading about the Dust Bowl. And even in Washington, D.C., they were experiencing some of the dust from the Dust Bowl that was coming in. It was like a cloud coming at them, you know. And we've seen that sometimes here, too, when the sand and the dust really kicks up, the wind's kicking up, and this thing's coming like a wall. You look to the west, man, and here it comes. You know it's coming. Some more of this pure, fresh mineral water that's uncontaminated and unrecycled. Very nice. I'm going to be talking about water here shortly. So this air pollution is everybody's problem. And then it goes on to say some pollutants are natural, like a volcano that erupts and spews ash and smoke into the sky. But you know what? That can be cleaned up by the atmosphere. The majority of pollutants are man-made from industrial factories that produce electricity and the exhaust fumes from vehicles all over the world, and many other causes. I want to stop for just a minute, and if you could show the first slide, please. All right, I don't know how much of that you can see on these screens here, or if you're looking at it online out there, how much of it you can actually read. On the particular monitor I'm looking at, it's a little bit fuzzy. I've got my own right here. We'll just go through it a little bit. But this is an Air Quality Index Basics, AQI Basics. What is the U.S. Air Quality Index? The U.S. AQI is EPA's index for reporting air quality. Now, if you've ever been watching the local news, you know, even here at the headquarters here outside of Abilene, if you watch the local news, you'll occasionally see an air quality index. It might be in the red or orange or what have you, especially when it's talking about pollen or, you know, smog, just pollution in general. In some of the bigger cities, I've seen, while driving into Houston not long ago, I noticed that they had signs all over the place, the big highway signs that light up, and it tells you air quality extremely bad, stay inside, you know, old people and young children stay inside, don't go outdoors. And I'm like, really? Wow, that's like really bad. Of course, there's people still have to go to work and have to get out in it and everything. But I wonder what kind of precautions are taken. Over a period of time, this can have an effect on you if your immune system is broken down. So how does the AQI work? It's on this chart here too. Think of the AQI as a yardstick that runs from 0 to 500. The higher the AQI value, the greater the level of air pollution and the greater the health concern. For example, an AQI value of 50 or below represents what they say is good air quality, while an AQI value over 300 represents hazardous air quality. For each pollutant, an AQI value of 100 generally corresponds to an ambient air concentration, and so forth. Okay, you got the idea. So it's a chart that starts out low, around 50, and goes on up or 0 to 50, and goes on up to 300 or higher. Let's take a look at those. So if the air quality is great, you'll probably not hear much about it. It'll be green, 0 to 50 is the value, and the air quality is satisfactory. When it turns yellow, it's moderate. You'd probably see this on the news or some type of warning in some manner. Air quality is acceptable, however, there might be risk for some people who are sensitive to the pollution. Orange, unhealthy for sensitive groups. This is where it's going to tell you that these sensitive groups might want to stay inside, but the general public's probably not going to be affected that much. When it turns red, and you see this often, some members of the general public might experience health effects. Members of sensitive groups experience more serious health effects. Then as it turns purple, it increases for everyone. Then if it gets to that maroon stage where it's 300 or higher, it's a health warning of emergency conditions, and everyone is more likely to be affected. So there it is right there. If you haven't seen it on one of the monitors, you guys that are out there on the internet, there it is for you to look at. I'm sure you've seen some of these things before, especially if you live in a city, okay? It's quite common. So back to page 178, looks like about the second paragraph. Some harmful chemicals such as carbon monoxide and nitrogen oxides come from these sources and significantly pollute the air. When sunlight heats these elements, they produce smog. We've all seen smog before. I don't know if you know you've seen it, but I used to live in the desert in California, and there were these two big, 11,000-foot mountains, and they had what was called the pass, the Gorgonio Pass, and that was Interstate 10 coming from L.A. And what would occur when the ocean winds kicked up, it would blow that all the way through L.A. and Riverside and all these places, and then get to that pass, and then it would just concentrate and come through the mountains to the Palm Springs and the desert area there, and it would just kill us. I mean, it would be so heavy, and there wasn't even really any industry around those parts. There was no there was industry as far as, regular things, plumbing companies and car repair shops and so forth and so on, supermarkets, all that. But there weren't any manufacturing facilities to speak of out there. It was all, all west. But that stuff got us, and it was like a wall coming in, and it was just smog, pure pollution. And we even see that sometimes here around Abilene when the winds are blowing particularly hard and it comes in from other areas. If you're in the Dallas area, you'll see it quite often as you're approaching the Dallas-Fort Worth. We're in Texas, so I'm talking about that. you'll see that you can't see the skyscrapers as readily. You know, it'll have kind of a foggy look to it, you know. It's not fog, it's smog, guys. Our air quality really is pretty bad. But some harmful chemicals such as the carbon monoxide and nitrogen, these things pollute the air, and when sunlight heats them, they produce smog. The word smog is a combination of two words, smoke and fog. But it's a fog of smoke is what it is. Smoke is visible as a dense haze that floats over many industrialized cities all over the world. In some cities, smog is so bad that people are warned to stay indoors. Smog affects both the young and old and worsens respiratory diseases such as asthma and emphysema. And I know that when people do have some particular lung bronchial problems, a lot of times the doctors send them to a drier climate like the desert, like it normally is here. It's a little humid today, but normally it's pretty dry here, and like it was in the desert in California also. And people go there to kind of lessen the effects of these diseases that they have. But it also puts a serious strain on the heart and promotes certain cancers too. So some air pollution returns to the earth in the form of acid rain. Acid rain is formed when sulfuric acid and other elements put into the atmosphere in the form of smoke from industrial factories, exhaust fumes, or other sources mix with water vapor and fall to the earth as rain. Well, there doesn't have to be rain for this stuff to affect you. I remember working on the Houston Ship Channel one time when I was much younger, and there was a particular huge chemical company right across the channel from where I worked, and at night they would spew off. You could see it and you could smell it, and it would burn your throat. But what would occur is at night, when they could get by with it, you know, and this is back in the 80s, early 80s, so there wasn't a, you know, they were, you know, checking it some, but there was still a lot of deregulation there and a lot of things going on. But at night they would spew this stuff out there, and you could tell it had some kind of sulfur content because of the way it tasted as it went into your mouth and your lungs and everything, and it actually burnt. And it was a shipyard there in Houston, and right across the channel was that big company. I would say the name of it, but probably changed anyway. You know, no need for that. But there's a lot of industrial companies like that, chemical companies around that area, and oil refineries too. So anyway, this sulfuric acid and everything that gets out there and you breathe it in, it does have an effect on you. It can have long-lasting effects too, especially if you stay in it. Acid rain corrodes buildings, damages crops and forests, and makes lakes and streams unsuitable for fish and other plant and animal life. And next it says the Clean Air Act of 1970 was created for air pollution control in the United States. Amendments have been added to control emissions from the industrial and automotive industries. And I'm thinking about the automotive industry right here, in that the acid rain, how it affects the paint on cars. This has been, I mean, I've been in the car business a long time, and I've seen this. I saw it years ago when I was much younger and working with new cars. You would see them come in, and they would have the effects of acid rain on the clear coat, on the paint, on these brand new cars. And, you know, it had to be fixed before you could really sell them. But anyway, so they're trying to do some of these things, trying to clean it up. But of course, there's money to be made. There might be more money being made now in the cleanup efforts since they're really going after people and all. But there's the companies, you know, there's a lot of money to be made without having to deal with all this cleanup stuff, you know. And that's why it got out of hand in the first place. And with all their efforts, what difference is it going to make if other countries are not, you know, being guided by this too? You know, I look at pictures of China and I see the smog in the air, how horrible it is in some places, you know. Well, there's other places that are like that too, and so this stuff is going all over the globe. It just might not be as concentrated. And I'm glad that here at the Peaceful Solution headquarters, we're at quite an altitude, and I think that helps us avoid some of that stuff along the way. Some of it still gets to us, but it helps a little bit. Before we get to talking about water, I'd like for you to water, that fresh mineral water. Very nice. Very nice. You'll want to get some of that. So let's stop and think and look at a few questions, a little activity. We won't be able to take the questions from the audience, but just think about it. If you were a policymaker of some type, which hopefully everyone in this class at some point in time in their life in the future will be some type of policymaker to help the lives of others, not hurt the lives of others. But if you were a policymaker, how would you address the problem of air pollution? Think about it a minute. How would you address the problem of air pollution? Now, it's not as simple as saying, make everyone quit spewing out pollution. It's not that simple. You have to have a plan. You have to have a plan that's going to carry through. You have to be able to show people your plan and show them why and have some facts and figures to back it up. Hopefully the facts and figures that you would use would be true facts and figures and not false ones. Because as we know, I know Williams brought it several times, there's true facts and there's untrue facts. So we got to know which ones we're dealing with. We want to deal with true facts when we're dealing with people because that's the only way you can help people. So in the teacher's manual, we have a supposed answer here that some might come up with, but I could, through public service announcements and other forms of advertisement, educate the public about the dangers of air pollution. Car owners could even be encouraged, either through law or incentive, to have their cars' exhaust systems checked. I didn't mean to make it sound too light on the cars. That is something. They have had. I remember when there was no care at all about what was coming out of a car, and yeah, it was pretty bad. But industries could be mandated to function more efficiently, thereby reducing the amount of dangerous pollutants in the air. Community programs could be implemented where citizens are taught simple measures that can be taken to reduce air pollution. But think about that for a minute, and think about that. Sounds simple? Community programs could be implemented. How are you going to do that? How would you, as a policymaker, implement that community program? How would you go about it? We need to think about these things, because there's going to come a time when you are in that position to do that. So be thinking about it from time to time on, what would I do? What would I really do to get this thing started? What kind of backlash would I have? What kind of wall would I come up against? Think about these things, okay? Well, let's go ahead and move on. Let's go ahead and look back and look at lesson plan 7, page D for a minute. So we finished procedure 5, and we're moving on to procedure 6. It says to explain to students that all organisms contain water, and water, like air, is essential to life. Guide class feedback by asking students to estimate the percentage of water in a human being, a chicken, an elephant, a pineapple, and so on. Write the answers on the board, and this is if you have an interactive class, and instruct the students then to read pages 180 through 182 in the handbooks. What we're going to find is the section entitled Water. It says have students compare their predictions with the actual answers found on page 180. And instruct students to complete the stop and think about it exercise on page 181 and discuss the answers. So think about it for a minute before you turn the page and go to 180. Think about what percentage of water is a human being made of? What about a little chicken? What about a big, massive elephant? A pineapple? A potato? A watermelon? Think about it. Think about those things. What percentage of water? I know when you dip into a juicy watermelon, that thing's got to have a large percentage of water, doesn't it? Let's go on over to page 180. And again, water. Man, it's refreshing. You have to have it. But we're going to find out here in a minute that not all people have access to nice, fresh, mineral water that's healthy that you can drink safely knowing it's beneficial to you. Makes me thirsty just talking about it. All right. Another important resource that our earth provides us with is water. And like air, water is essential to life. In fact, not only do all organisms need water, but water is also a part of all living things. 50 to 90% of the weight of living organisms is water. So let's look at this for a minute on how important this is. Humans are approximately 70% water. Were you anywhere close to that? Anybody? Were you close to that with that figure? Can you believe that? 70%? That's almost like you walk up to somebody with a pen and poke them and it starts spewing out water out of their arm. 70%? Really? Chickens are approximately 75. An elephant, 70%. Really? A pineapple only 65%? I would have thought it would have been much higher. Because, you cut into a nice pineapple and man, that juice is there. A potato is 80% water. Human teeth are 10%. Human lungs are 80%. A human brain is 80.5% water. And human blood is approximately 90.7% water. Well, isn't that interesting that blood is 90.7% water? I have something to read you about that in just a moment. You're not going to like it. Human muscles are approximately 75% water. What you might like is that you're here at the Peaceful Solution headquarters getting clean, fresh water rather than, if you're having to drink tap water. But have you ever wondered why you get thirsty? The low levels of water in your blood is what triggers the brain's thirst center to send out that signal that you're thirsty. Excuse me. Now, we're going to talk about the world's water supply for just a minute. And this is going to take the brunt of the class. But water is the most common substance on Earth. In fact, if you look at a picture of the globe, you're going to see a lot of water, right? A lot of water. Over 70% of the Earth's surface is water, and about 97% of Earth's water is in the oceans. The remaining 3% is fresh water, but 2% of that is in the form of glaciers and ice caps. This leaves only 1% of the Earth's water available for human, animal, and plant life. Now think about this for a minute, because oceans are salt water, right? And all water ends up flowing back into the oceans some way or another, whether it be, going into the ground and then water evaporates into the clouds. It's filtered through the ground into aquifers and wells, artesian wells, and so forth. And then, it evaporates into the clouds, and the clouds take it. And it's this process, this wonderful process that's just amazing of the water getting cleaned again. Now, this is a form of, recycling water, but it's done in a natural way that cleans the water for sure. There are people that think that they can clean the water through a chemical process in a short period of time, and they even say it's drinkable. Well, I like my water. I like my water right here that I have that has, it's fresh and pure, it's clean, it has minerals in it, it's very healthy for you. I'm going to take another drink. If you have some, you could too. Man, that is great. Okay. This just makes me thirsty reading about water. All right, so I'm going to read something to you. Now this is, hold on a minute. So the oceans are salt, and the fresh water, of course, a lot of people use that for drinking and so forth. The glaciers and ice ice caps, these things freeze, they melt down, water flows into our lakes and rivers and streams and ponds and so forth. So, but if you live in an area of the world where you have plenty of relatively clean water, it can be easy to take the availability of it for granted, which I think is what we do sometimes around here, you know, but you should be thinking about how blessed you are to have clean water, and I think you will after we finish this class. In fact, in nations where clean water is plentiful, people often waste water by leaving the water running while they brush their teeth, excessively watering their lawns, not fixing leaky faucets, and so forth. However, there's many areas in the world where even in these modern times, people live without access to clean water. Human and animal waste pollute the water that is available for daily use. And without relatively clean water to drink and use, people die of dehydration, dysentery, cholera, typhoid, all these diseases that are caused by the water. These waterborne illnesses can be very serious. In fact, cholera is so fatal that death can occur within only a few hours after the symptoms first appear. The United Nations estimates that between 5 and 10 million people could die each year because of waterborne diseases. And could you imagine not having clean water for drinking, cooking, bathing, washing your clothes, and so forth? And I'm going to ask that question again in a little bit. Okay, can you show the next slide, please? Don't know how much of that you can read, if you can, but I've got it right here and I'm going to read it to you. There is a growing concern about the occurrence of pharmaceuticals in water bodies and in drinking water. Did you hear what I just said? Pharmaceuticals, really? Pharmaceuticals get into the water supply via human excretion and by drugs being flushed down the toilet. And you might think wastewater treatment plants would take care of the situation, but pharmaceuticals pass through these water treatment plants. I'm chuckling a little bit because I remember visiting a water treatment plant in South Texas. A large group of us went there, the Peaceful Solution, and we went on a tour of the facility. And man, this was like, you know, multi-million dollar facility that these people invested in, and they got this thing ready to go, and it's right by the Rio Grande. In fact, while we were there, we saw some people crossing in a very remote area. I mean, for real. And so this water gets treated and then pumped back in there, and it gets shipped off to some golf courses and so forth to be used to water and I guess fertilize their lawns and so forth. But when we asked, and when the water came out the end, after we saw it go in as murky brown sludge from toilets, and then we saw the sludge mixed up in these open tanks and then sat there to ferment for a while, and then they would scrape off the top of it. Then they would stir it around some more and scrape off the foamy top again. It was really pretty gross. And then it would go through these processes. And so at the very end, one of the teachers asked the guy, and I'm sorry, it was kind of funny, but they asked the guy, because he poured it in a bottle, and he said, "Here, do you want to take a drink?" And they said, "Well, no, but what about you?" And he goes, "I'm not drinking that stuff." But that's why they're recycling it, to put it back into the water supply to drink, okay? And all of us have heard over and over again about these cities that are doing that because they have no water. On the West Coast, it's getting really, really bad because these big lakes are losing their water. And Las Vegas and Los Angeles and all these big cities rely on it. It's not going to be there. But I remember in Little Rock many years ago, man, it's been like 10 or 15 years ago, I remember calling to find out a little bit about the water. I was asked to check on it a little bit, and so I did. And I didn't even know about this. And the woman I talked to, they passed me on to about 2 or 3 different people, and she was one of the engineers. And she said, "Well, I wouldn't be worried about that in the water. What I'd be worried about are the pharmaceuticals." And this is the first I ever heard about it in my life. I said, "Pharmaceuticals? What do you mean?" And she said, "Oh, yeah." She said, "We're always testing for pharmaceuticals because it's very high. If you're drinking tap water out of Little Rock, Arkansas, you're drinking pharmaceuticals." And she went on to name a few of them, and I was just like this. I couldn't even believe it. I immediately made a phone call and started talking about this water supply. But anyway, we can put that slide back up. So pharmaceuticals in the water. In 2004 to 2009, the U.S. Geological Survey, scientists found that pharmaceutical manufacturing facilities can be a significant source of pharmaceuticals in the environment. Effluents from 2 wastewater treatment plants that received the discharge from the manufacturing had 10 to 1,000 times higher concentration of pharmaceuticals, excuse me, and the released waters were discharged to streams where the measured pharmaceuticals were traced downstream as far as 30 kilometers from one plant's outfall. The source of pharmaceuticals in water is not just from manufacturing plants. You probably know that antibiotics and drugs are used in the livestock industry, and streams receiving runoff, acetaminophen, caffeine, some things I can't even pronounce have been found in these studies in the water. I remember I was canoeing down a stream one time in Arkansas, a very big river, and I noticed actually the water level was down quite a bit, and there was this green, like fluorescent looking stuff in the water up kind of where we were floating to, and I thought, what is that? And we got to it, and I'm looking down at it, and it's glowing. I mean, really, literally, I was thinking some kind of nuclear type stuff or something. And anyway, later on, I found out it was the runoff from a pig farm. Man, it was like filling up the river. It was so gross. But this water then flowed downstream into the water supply, the drinking supply. But anyway, another source of pharmaceuticals in stream water is, guess what? You and me. Well, hopefully not us, but some. Pharmaceuticals in the water. It goes into the sewage, and then it's recycled and used in the water, but it also goes downstream to the next water treatment facility. These drugs that people take internally, and just think about all the drugs, oh man. Well, okay, next slide, please. I got to move on. So the next slide shows you kind of how it flows. Pharmaceutical factory, houses, toilets, landfills, and so forth. And this is the flow of the pharmaceuticals into the sewage treatment plant, and then back out into the rivers, and then on downstream, and where the livestock get hold of it, the fish get hold of it, and the wildlife get hold of it. And I'm sorry I couldn't bring... I was going to copy a clip to show you about what it does to fish. It actually feminizes the fish and turns male fish into female fish. I guess it's right in time with the... Well, I'm not going to say it. But it does turn male fish into female fish, pretty much all the way. It starts changing. Let's just say that. I got to leave it at that. And I couldn't show that clip because of the same thing. But you got the idea, probably. So, remember when I said human blood is approximately 90.7% water? Next slide, please. Next, yeah, there you go. Human blood in water systems. Now, how does that get there? Health department officials cut off the water supply to a funeral home located in a southern city after it was determined that human blood had contaminated the fresh water supply. The chief plumbing inspector received a telephone call advising that blood was coming from drinking fountains within the building. Yummy. Plumbing and county health department inspectors went to the scene and found evidence that the blood had been circulating in the water system within the building for some time. They immediately ordered the building cut off from the water system at the meter. The investigation revealed that the funeral home had been using a hydraulic aspirator to drain fluids. I bet some of our plumbers know about this. From the bodies of human remains as part of the embalming process, and the aspirator directly connected to the water supply system at a faucet outlet located on the sink. Well, you get the idea. It flows through there and back flows into the clean water supply, okay? And I first found out about this. I had a business in Little Rock, and I was told I would have to install a $900 backflow system in my building. And I'm like, backflow? Why? And they said, well, you use a pressure washer out here sometimes with soap, and that soap can backwash into the system. I said, really? I never heard of that before. And he said, well, let me just tell you. And he didn't mind talking about it. He said, guess what occurs at funeral homes? And I'm like, what? Well, he told me basically the same thing as we're talking about here, that the water goes back into the municipal system. And he said, they've been making them put these things on for some time. Excuse me for getting a little choked up. You might be too. But I found out later I could get it done for quite a bit less. You know, it wasn't quite that much. Next slide, please. Next slide. One of the most, not that one. Well, wait a minute. Yes, that one. Okay. Lost it. Okay. That right there is the street of a funeral home. And the little, the big thing right in the middle, big square thing, is a holding tank. And then the little thing where the blood and embalming fluid and everything is running out on the street is right there. And then there's the city street right there that it's running in right there. You know, pretty bad, I know. I've got a few more pictures here that I'm sure you're desiring to see at about this time. But keep in mind, man, this has been going on for decades. This is nothing new. It's just now that they're starting to kind of try to do something about it. I've lost a few of my pictures, I think. Well, okay, so the next slide, please. Okay, this is called an alkaline hydrolysis unit. Look at the size of it. What might fit in there, do you think? Great guess. An alkaline hydrolysis system. It's catching a lot of flack right now, but this is one of the new ways to dispose of human bodies because people said it's so unsanitary to put the bodies into the ground. They're like, oh, what a horrible thing to put those bodies in the ground. You know, and of course, cremation's been around for a long time. They burn them and put it in the air. You know, we're talking about the air quality. Now they're, guess what? Putting it in the water. There's some flack, and it's really illegal in about 30 states right now, but it's gaining a lot of people. Let's go to the next slide. So one of the most common things the public doesn't know, says the leading U.S. thanatologist and death educator, is that when someone is embalmed, all the blood that comes out of your body, where does that go? It goes down the drain. So why are you discriminating against one particular disposition method? You know, it looks like she's probably for this particular alkaline hydrolysis. But in fact, almost all the human waste that comes from hospitals and funeral homes as a result of the embalming process is permitted to be processed through these official channels. So if you're allowing byproducts from funeral homes to go into the municipal water system for treatment, why are you discriminating against one particular disposition method, she asks. It's an interesting kind of cognitive dissonance. So think about these things, man. Start thinking about how great it is to be where you're at if you're in a place that doesn't do this. Okay, next slide, please. So we're spending a little bit of time on this, but I want you to really realize how the water is so important. And even though we hear that the water supply in the United States is wonderful, and there's these foreign countries where the water supply is horrible, think about it. Just think about it. All right, so this says waste not. What remains to be dealt with, however, is what comes out the other side. Ashes are one thing. This is out of that alkaline hydrolysis thing. When you can pop them on the mantle in the decorative urn, sprinkle them at sea, or have them launched into space. But what about the residual liquid? One of the biggest roadblocks to the acceptance of alkaline hydrolysis technology is the issue of wastewater because of its association with death. The liquid is perceived as too unsanitary to be processed normally. Say it goes to the same recycling plants that supply residential areas. The idea of drinking the essence of a dead body sounds a little bit abhorrent, doesn't it? It's hard enough swallowing the idea of recycled sewage water. Remains inconceivable. But technology already exists to tackle almost any kind of wastewater. Sewage water is filtered for reuse in municipal treatment plants. Organic materials broken down in anaerobic digesters which convert the material into methane or biogas. Specially designed ultrafiltration systems can even tackle aqueous nuclear waste. Any liquid waste that we have, we can deal with, says this guy. So he's all for it, right? Okay, well, I guess it's time to go ahead and show you a little video that we have before I go any further. Can we get that clip, please? Okay, well, guess everybody wants to move there, right? So, the question again that we asked is, could you imagine not having clean water for drinking, cooking, bathing, or washing your clothes? When you consider how a lack of clean water affects your life, can you begin to appreciate the value of this very important resource? Do you appreciate the value of this fresh mineral water, clean, pure, without human remains in it? And what does that have to do with peace? What does that have to do with the peaceful solution? You know, it has everything to do with it, because, first of all, you know, they still to this day have not really found out the damage like cremation has done to the air and to people, and now they're making dead bodies into water and putting it on plants. I mean, it's not just, don't think it's just trees. It's might be on fruit trees and other vegetables and so forth. Did you see the picture there where they were walking along? It showed the nice green area and the kind of drab area to give you the idea that, oh yes, our human remains sprayed on here. Look how green everything is, you know, and look how horrible this is. So they might find that it's working really well for them and start using it on all the vegetable farms and fruit farms and everything else. Doesn't that just sound wonderful? Can it make you start appreciating clean, fresh water? And so what it has to do with peace is that in the peaceful solution, we teach that we should not harm ourselves or others and the environment. From what I can see, that's doing all of those things. You know, the man took that into his hand, holding the liquefied body of somebody. What a horrible, horrible thing. I mean, unbelievable. I hope everybody's kind of like, you know, a little bit sick at your stomach over this one. Really, because it makes me really, really appreciate it. I can't tell you enough how appreciative I am and how I have a whole new look on not wasting water. And you know, I remember the Peaceful Solution, the author of the Peaceful Solution, Israel Hawkins, telling us over and over again, hey, don't waste the water. It's not great to waste water. And you might be thinking, man, we got water all over the place. So what do you mean? You know, but don't waste the water. He was always reminding us not to waste the water. And so let's give it a renewed thought process here and not waste the water, okay? Because clean water, as you can see, is dwindling. It's getting farther and farther away and less and less for these people that live in the cities. What a horrible outcome. But anyway, so I hope you can begin to appreciate the value of this very important resource. And so stop and think about it. It says to list 5 ways you and your family use water. And of course, you know, the usual: drink, bathe, flush, wash clothes, dishes, you know, swimming, cleaning the house and so forth. There's many uses for clean water that we need, that we all need. How would your life be affected if you did not have easy access to clean water? And again, we take it for granted, I think, because we do have easy access to clean water right here. This is some of the cleanest water on earth. I mean, it is wonderful. Where we're located, and you know, up at the elevation that we're at, and the aquifers that are under us here, some of the best, cleanest water around, or over the whole earth. Of course, answers are going to vary. You as a teacher need to keep in mind that you're going to have different answers, and don't condemn any answer. You know, you might get something a little bit off the wall from somebody here or there. You might get somebody trying to just kind of cause a little bit of fuss, you know, but don't worry about it. You can deal with that at some other time. But keep it positive. Always keep it positive as a teacher of the Peaceful Solution. Don't condemn. Any answer is a great answer because someone did answer, you know. And you can deal with any wrong answers as the time is right. But if we didn't have that access, many activities such as drinking, eating, and bathing would become difficult or near impossible. And I knew I wouldn't have time. I wanted to bring some of the clips from other areas of the world to where it's really, really bad. I mean, you know, they're not even worried about all this melting down of the bodies and everything. They're worried about even finding some sewage to drink, you know. I mean, really, it's really, really bad. And so with the peaceful solution, if respect were shown to everybody, and this is what you as a teacher needs to get across in your own mind and to the student, is that this is about respect. This is about true care and concern. You know, people want to make money and they kind of throw all that out the window. But if you have true care and concern for others, you're going to look into what the right way to do things is when it comes to the water supply, the air supply, and the food supply. And believe me, we have people here who have trained in this for a long time. If you want to know how it's done, hey, come see us at headquarters. We'll show you how it's done. You know, occasionally we have a meeting that, you know, everybody's invited to. Any peaceful solution teachers, of course, are invited at any time. Just call and make arrangements, and you can come and check it out. So keep it in mind that we know the right way to do things, and we can teach you so that you can teach others. And this will protect the entire earth, and we can clean up the earth together, you know, little by little, starting with you, okay? Thank you very much for being here tonight, and we will be continuing on page 181. And that'll be on, well, let's see, on the 20th of this month, on Wednesday, the 20th at 5:30, and we'll be continuing on page 181, so we look forward to having everybody here, and those of you that are on the internet too, we look forward to you joining us again, okay? Thank you.